Catch Big Red Wrap-Up, game highlights, and analysis on NET, Nebraska's PBS and NPR stations. Tuesday nights live at 7 on NET World and Facebook, and at 10 on NET.
Shut up. Stay in your lane.
Welcome to the Mind Your Own podcast with Aaron Sorensen and Sasha Durkin, where we stick to sports, except when we're not.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mind Your Own podcast. I'm Erin.
I'm Sasha.
And thank you for joining us. We are getting toward the end of the year. It's hard to believe when you think of how little time is left in 2020, but here we are.
Yeah.
I think a lot about what I was sort of thinking around this time last year. So at the end of 2019, I just remember feeling so hopeful about 2020. Mm-hmm. And
gosh, that was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. I remember about this time last year thinking, okay, at this point I was about 5 months from my wedding, or what was going to be my wedding. The things that I was so concerned about at that time were so different. I was worried about bridesmaids dresses and, we better go get the groomsmen tuxes or suits picked out, whatever. It was just like, not that these things don't matter. They certainly do, but it was just a very different, it was a different thought process. And now here I am crying on a random Sunday or Monday morning because I happened to watch the live feed of the COVID-19 vaccine leaving a plant in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Right.
So that's where we're at 1 year later, is just nothing like a good cry over a FedEx truck.
I remember setting goals, and I had so many things that I wanted to get done, and I was excited about vacations, and because those weren't going to happen until later in the year. Mm-hmm.
I was like, I have not sincerely had a true vacation. So there's a joke in a lot of industries, and speaking from what I do in journalism and kind of like a small business. But a lot of small businesses say this, that when they take vacations, they're not actually taking a vacation. They're just working in a different location. Yeah. That's really it. I want to point something out. I was literally I was in St. Thomas. St. Thomas, and Will Farniak committed to Nebraska. So here I am in the kitchen of the condo we were staying at, writing a commitment story. I mean, it took me 5 minutes, but it's I'm in St. Thomas, and it's what a nice working location. Right. But I had legitimate trips where I was like, all right, Hail Varsity, I am going to be out for a period of time. You will not hear from me. Right. So if the social medias don't get updated, it ain't my fault. Right. This was the first time in a long time where I'm I am going to shut things off. To be honest, I am not somebody that does well with the whole completely shut everything off, because that actually makes me feel more stressed. But I'm talking I would not have cared about anything work related. Right. If I opened my phone and was reading Twitter, I am not one of those people that's I have to throw my phone in the ocean to enjoy this vacation. I just was more I'm going to go on these vacations and not care about work. And then all I've done in 2020 is
sleep at work.
It's just sleep at work. What a
You're
difference.
Sleeping in your office.
Pretty much, because my office is in my closet, which is in my bedroom. So I'm basically sleeping in my office. Yeah. It's great.
It's awesome.
It's nothing like taking the 20 feet from my bed, the 20 steps from my bed to my desk to really get my day started. Right. But I think for me, seeing those trucks and knowing that different hospitals around the country, I know Nebraska Medicine, as of Tuesday morning at 6 a.m. received their first shipment of the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine. And obviously there's more to come. It's not going to be as quick of a rollout as we'd hope in some, we don't need to spend our time getting into the why of that, but it's going to be a while. I am completely last on the list. So I am not going to see this vaccine for a long time.
So maybe we could have all have a normal-ish summer.
Well, that's the thing that, like, you know, I'm really having to think about, like, what will life look like in April, because that is when our postponed wedding is scheduled for. And, like, I'm just not comfortable putting the people I love in a situation that's not safe, because here's the thing. If I were to say to my friends and family, we're moving forward with a wedding in 2 weeks from today, people will show up. Here's the thing is, like, this has been the hardest part through this entire pandemic for the people who are like, I'm taking this very seriously and I am going to actively do what I can not to be out. I'm going to limit my, my trips out of the house to just only essential things. I'm going to wear a mask. I'm going to do all this stuff. Like, it is a big burden. And when we talked last week in our previous episode about feeling lonely, I think that's where I feel lonely sometimes. And it's not like we're all a bunch of martyrs or anything, but it's like, if I decided today to have a wedding a week from now, people I love that really should not be in a large gathering would show up because they would think they were doing the right thing for me. Right. And so that's what's so hard with this, is like trying to decide, like, where are we going to be 4 or 5 months from now when maybe it will look better. We don't really, I guess, know what this rollout of the vaccine is going to look like. But for now, for some reason, knowing there are physical vials of this vaccine in our city and leaving plants to be distributed, for some reason gave me like this sense of hope that I have not had in a long time. Yeah. Like, I felt really good.
And I'm kind of a turd in this way. Like, I feel like I'm constantly like this squelcher of happiness.
Oh no. Are you going to like destroy me on this one?
No, I'm not excited. I'm hopeful, but I'm not like excited because it's going to be a while still. Right. And I feel like my fear with this is people knowing that it is out there are gonna start relaxing even more than they already have.
Yes.
And like, I get it. Because part of me is like, yeah, sweet. But then I have to be the realistic. It's not even being pessimistic, I don't think. It could be looked at that way, I suppose. But I'm like, still can't leave my house till summer.
Yeah, I mean, so Brian Health out of Lincoln, they shared on Facebook. They probably tweeted it as well. I don't know what words are anymore. But anyway, they vaccinated their first individual on Monday of, whenever you're listening to this, it was Monday of that week. This is what they shared. Smiles, happy tears, and a whole lot of happiness. Hope arrived today for the Bryan frontline staff and doctors in the form of a COVID-19 vaccine. But the fight is not yet finished. Until vaccines are readily available to the public, please continue to take the highest safety precautions. Wash up, mask up, and please stay home as much as possible. Here's the thing. The vaccine is out there. And I agree with you. Like, not to be like, I feel like we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, but I need you to understand that light, that the end of the tunnel is still like 100 really miles away. Like, we're still pretty far from it. Yeah. And we're not going to get there if we keep making it harder. Now, I am happy about this because one of my best friends, my maid of honor, she is a neurosurgeon. She's incredible. She has had the year from hell. Like, all of our healthcare professionals, if you listened to our episode a couple of weeks ago, whenever it was now, I cried over, like, you can hear me get upset because I watched an episode of The Good Doctor, and all it is about basically how we're treating our healthcare professionals like shit. Like, we're putting them in the worst of situations. And I'm even going to get emotional again, but like, this is not, like, I understand we've done the same thing to teachers. Don't come for me. I understand that there's so many people who've been impacted by this. But just looking at those individuals in the hospitals who, they are there, like, you think of somebody who's a neurosurgeon. They are there for how many other things that are not related to COVID-19, but they are now having to also focus on this virus. They're not sometimes able to see their families. They're sleeping in their garages. Right. They're not able to go home. They're having to completely strip all of their clothes off before they leave and then completely change before they can go anywhere else. Some of them hadn't seen their families for months and months and months. And here's the thing. I'm so happy for someone like her that she's going to be able to have the vaccine, because I hope that this allows her to continue to do her job safely, but now be able to not necessarily relax, but feel a little bit of relief. Right. Because she and so many others deserve that. Right. They deserve to be able to walk into their hospital and not feel afraid or not feel overwhelmed by what's coming in the door. They're still going to. So that's why we say you have to still take this seriously, because, I mean, we're now seeing like colleges, the football program saying like, you know what, we're done. We're not playing a bowl game. We're just, it's so interesting because, 3-4 months ago, the entire conversation was like, everybody just wants to play. Mm-hmm. Everybody just wants to play. And now we're here and you're hearing teams who are like, the mental toll this has taken to do this is just too much. Yeah. We don't need a bowl game. It's not going to serve us in the way that we want. We're ready to just
potentially puts our players and coaches and staff at risk.
Yeah, look at Duke's coach in basketball. He basically said, like, we're done. We're not doing non-conference. Like, we're going to let our kids go home and have the holidays with their families. We're just going to let them go home and have some time, because this is just, I think more than anything else, and I have sort of felt this way throughout this season for Nebraska. What has happened on the field is one thing, but on Saturday, I was standing in Memorial Stadium and I walked into this room. So if you're listening, you're always wondering, like, what is the media situation like? You might be, I don't know. There's a big room that has like 3 levels that overlook into the stadium where we all sit. But then there's this other room where we typically will do midweek or early week press conferences. It's not where they do their post-game press conferences, but like that's where we eat our meals. That's where we do a lot of our interviews, is this room. I walked into it on Saturday and looked around, and I was the only one in there. And I had this moment where I'm like, as nice as it was to be in Memorial Stadium, and I'm not looking at this like I'm not grateful for the ability to have my job and to have these moments, but like, I don't know. I just looked around and was like, this room is not what it usually is. Yeah. It's not. It's usually filled with such life. It's usually filled with such it's loud. There's a lot of things happening. Yeah. You hear the pop machine at all times, like in the background, to the point that they have to turn it off when people are at the podium. And like, I'm just looking around at this room and thinking, like, I'm just gonna like absorb this moment and appreciate it, because I'm glad that I'm standing here. However, this is where the mental toll takes such, like, it just like, this is not normal. Yeah. And I keep thinking, like, when is the next time I will stand in that room with a group of people in close proximity, laughing, hearing the pop machine, disrupting everyone's interviews. Like, these are the things where it's like, I get it. When it's
just simple stuff.
When a team is like, you know what, we're just not going to play a bowl game. Or Brendan Hymas, who is one of Nebraska's offensive linemen, he has opted out of playing against Rutgers this weekend and is just going to move forward with his future of preparing for the NFL. I don't blame him, because you get to a point where you're like, you know what?
What's the point?
It's like, for him, what if Friday, the game against Rutgers, what if that's the one where he gets so seriously injured he can't pursue that career in the NFL? So you get to a point where you're like, you know, maybe this is just, it's time to just hang this up, look at this as what it was, and move forward into my future. And someone like him, you know, he might have an outside shot at the NFL. I think he's got some work ahead for him, but he's probably weighing that as, well, this is what makes the most sense for me. And I don't blame him, because, to be honest, the like health side of this is one piece, but the mental side of it is an entire, like, our mental health has been tested so many ways. And like, we look at these players and go, well, they wanted to play. They should be playing. Well, yeah, they did, but I don't know if, like, when we were saying...
Are you doing all the things that you want to be doing, or do you sometimes have rough days and you just don't, and you need a minute?
Yeah, I mean, but like, also when they were saying that they really wanted to play in September, that they didn't have the benefit of hindsight at that point. You haven't lived it at that point. You're going like, let us have a chance. Yep. That's all they wanted, was a shot to play.
They got it, and now it's like, okay.
And some players are probably going, I'm good with this. Like, I'm just happy to be here. But some are like, look, this isn't it. Yeah. This isn't it. And so, I don't know. Like I said, I was I'm glad to feel like I see that like very, very small speck in the distance of like a glimmer, like the light is there now. Like the light has come on at the end of the tunnel.
There's still a lot.
But it's going to be
ahead.
a while.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
been, I don't know. I had a rough weekend, just like mentally. I was like, when you're so busy that you can't slow down to actually think about things and where you're at, and then you are slowed down to like you're not doing anything, and then you're like, okay, oh my gosh, this weekend I like made myself like bake some shit because I just wanted something normal. It's like I wasn't baking it for anyone, and I had no idea who I was gonna give it to because we're not going anywhere or seeing anyone. But I just wanted to do something that was normal, whether that be watching a football game or for the players playing in a football game or like doing, I don't know, just doing things that are normal, like just helps sometimes, I guess. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
It
just
does.
Has been rough.
I've been thinking about that. Like there are so many things that I just like, I want to just do. Like I honestly, like I had a moment where this first and foremost, I want to just toss this in here before I forget, because I meant to say this like 10 minutes ago when we started this and completely forgot, got completely sidetracked. Just as a note, our next episode is going to be a mailbag episode. So before you go and continue listening to this episode, go open your email and send us a question at mindyourownpodcast@hailvarsity.com. Some of you have already sent messages. One of you even found my Instagram account, which is @HelloErinMarie, which is totally fine, and sent it that way. Perfect. Just send us questions, mindyourownpodcast@hailvarsity.com. That is your really poorly timed reminder for next week's mailbag that I forgot at the top of this episode. So before I forget, throwing it in there. So anyway, back to your regularly scheduled programming. We like, I don't know why, but like looking toward this winter, I sort of like, this is the first time where the weather has gotten bad enough where it's like, you really can't go for a walk. It's not great outside. It's
Girl,
cold.
I've been working out in the morning at 6 a.m. in a storage unit.
Yes.
And let me tell you, I came straight here this morning. I have not been warm since 6 in the morning. It sucks.
Good for you, though.
It sucks, though.
I'm
It's
proud of
not
you for
fun.
still doing it.
Like, wear a scarf when you go out for a walk if you really need to get out of your house. Like, bundle up.
It's just hard because, like, it's not safe for our dogs right now. Because, like, their paws. And so it's hard. And I was, like, just thinking, I'm like, in a normal year, like, we like to go to, there's a bar here in Omaha called Mercury. And they always do the holiday at Mercury with the fun, like, old school glasses. And now I am, like, a super fan of, like, Christmas and holiday decor from like the 50s and 60s. I think it's so like the kitschy stuff. I love it. So like I love doing that. I mean, we will probably just drive around and look at like holiday lights a lot because it's just something to do. Yeah. But the one thing I'm just going to say, and this honestly fits so many things, thank God for Nebraska volleyball, because Nebraska volleyball is going to start in January. And I have never been so glad that volleyball starts at such a random time of year, because that's going to be a blessing for so many reasons. For all of the like Nebraska fans who are going to end this football season frustrated, like, guess what? Volleyball is here.
Right.
But also for me, I'm like, it'll just give me something to like kind of like just focus on for a while, because that should run through about April. Like I think it could go all the way through May. I don't know, but it's regardless, it's going to be a majority of the end part of our winter into spring. I'm just like, thank God for Nebraska volleyball, which, I mean, you could say that for so many reasons, but and then you have basketball, which is nice. And, as long as these teams can stay safe, that's really all that matters. Again, it's like, I say this, like, thank God for Nebraska volleyball. Obviously, I want them to be safe. I don't want anyone to get sick. Obviously, one thing that a lot of people have their eyes on is there's that situation in Florida, the basketball player who collapsed. We don't know why, but there are some concerns because he apparently, allegedly tested positive for COVID-19 over the summer. So is it potentially related? We don't know. I do caution people from jumping to the conclusions on that because we don't know what has happened here. But like, it is the reality of, you know, the most important thing is the safety of these players and the coaches and the people who are working to make this happen. So I'm just going to say, if you're somebody who's like, why can't fans be in an arena? Shh, just know. Right. Because here's the thing. We're just fortunate that it's even happening. Yeah. And there have been a lot of people who've been very critical through football season of if this should even be happening. And that's a rightful criticism. Mm-hmm. So for me, when I turn on a game, like a football game, and I see so many fans in the crowd, like the SEC, I don't know what the SEC is doing. It doesn't make me feel good. It's like my primary focus is if we're going to do this thing, the focus needs to be on those players and the coaches on the sideline. And everything else around it is not necessary. Fans in the stands is not necessary if this is really what our goal is. So if you're somebody who's like, there should be fans in the stands for basketball, volleyball, if they choose not to, I don't care. That's
their prerogative. They're looking out for the safety of their players and coaches and their staffs.
Right.
So
I just don't
I
spare
get that you're frustrated or whatever and you want to do things, but like, sorry. You could either not have it at all or have it without fans. So
yeah.
I don't understand the logic on the other side of that, to be honest with you.
No, it's, you know, sports, I keep thinking about like, when will sports feel normal again? Like when will we all get to feel normal? And you know, it seems like if things go well, and this is what we're talking about with the light at the end of the tunnel, it seems like by fall of 2021, life will be more back to normal. And the question that I saw you answer on Twitter is somebody said, if like COVID-19 ended today, what is the first thing you would do? And I think you said go to a movie. Did you say that? I
don't think so.
Now I have to go look. Maybe I'm confusing you. It's fine. That's where we're at. Somebody asked a question. I swear you answered it. Maybe I'm going crazy.
When was it? I have no concept of time. So if it was a while ago.
I'm now going through your Twitter account. It's fine.
If it was a couple weeks ago, that sounds like maybe something I would have answered. But I think the first thing I would do, we were actually just talking about this the other night. Like, we don't really go to bars.
It wasn't you. What did you say? Sorry. Anyway, continue.
We don't really like go to bars anymore or anything like that. No. But like even before this, but I do miss physically going inside of a restaurant and eating. And I miss going to the movies. Like we did that. That's what we did every single Sunday, basically.
Maybe I just like dreamed this. I swear, because you know what's funny about this? I quite literally said this exact comment about this to Kyle, my fiance. Yeah. I was like, hey, Sasha answered. So I have no idea. I completely made something up in my head and I attributed it to you. So I apologize for putting words into.
I think maybe you saw it and like we answered this on a previous episode. I have no clue.
But this is super weird because I literally told him, I was like, oh, hey, Sasha answered this question on Twitter. So now I have incorrectly told this story twice. That is where my brain is at.
Hashtag 2020.
That is amazing. Also, like, maybe I'm just projecting what I think. I mean, that's the thing.
I would like to go to a bar, though. Like, that's the point that I'm at right now.
I would just like to go somewhere and, like, sit next to somebody and be upset that they're turning their chair a little too close to me.
Yes.
And be, like, annoyed that they've, like, taken some of my personal space. Like, I would like that right now.
I would welcome it. And then I would get over it immediately following. But I miss just doing random stuff whenever the hell we wanted to do random stuff. Mm-hmm. Honestly, like I typically don't. I've been a homebody for a while, probably for a couple of years now, strictly homebody. But not having the option to leave my house when I want to and go and do whatever I want to has really started to get to me. I thought I was good, but it's really starting to get to me lately. It's the cold.
Yes.
It's the football team that I watch because I'm in Nebraska is depressing. and I like it frustrating.
Oh, Nebraska.
And all of the other things that come with Nebraska. My NFL team sucks.
Oh, so my NFL team is great. I just want to say being a Chiefs fan has finally paid off. And when people are like, think I'm a bandwagon fan, I'm not. You can actually go back. I didn't have like an NFL team growing up. It just wasn't like, I didn't really have any professional teams. I would still tell you, I don't really have a MLB or an NBA team. So like those are kind of fun because I can just kind of enjoy whatever. But with the NFL, when I started to get into like high school and stuff, I knew a lot of people who were Chiefs fans. So I kind of was like, all right, I kind of like the Chiefs, whatever. But it was my friend who I was just actually talking about, who's the neurosurgeon. She's from Kansas, or she's from Missouri. Her parents now technically live in the Kansas side of Kansas City. But she grew up in Kansas City, Missouri. Big Chiefs fans. Her family has season tickets. They love it. So when we met my freshman year of college, she kind of got this feeling. She's like, I think Erin, knowing her, would like to go to a Chiefs game, or would like to do this stuff. So I started I've gone to multiple Chiefs games with her and her family. And so by the time the Chiefs had won the Super Bowl last year, I mean, I'd been like cheering for them for well over a decade at that point. I mean, almost close to like 14 years. So I've lived through a lot of bad Chiefs, not as much as others. Like, I understand there's a lot, but like I have lived through a lot of bad Chiefs. Like, I remember when I decided, I was like, okay, I'm going to be a Chiefs fan. I was dating this one guy, and he was like, I don't even remember who he cheered for, but he was like, why would you pick the Chiefs? Like, they're terrible. Yeah. And he like was surprised. So I feel vindicated. So to that man, take that. Yeah. Take that.
Yeah. I honestly, like, Saturday, Nebraska. This is how bad this game was. I watch every game.
Did you not watch this one?
Was falling asleep.
Oh, nah.
In the second half of this game.
Oh, I was trying so hard to do that thing where like I knew like there's a potential that this would be my last game at Memorial Stadium. So I was like doing that thing where I was like trying to be like very like in the moment and present and like looking around and like really appreciating it, while also like trying not to like be too like frustrated by whatever I was witnessing in front of me. Yeah, it's going to be a long off season for.
It was already going to be.
It's going to be an especially long off season.
But, yeah.
And here's the thing: as a fan, so I was actually having this conversation just the other day. If you're a fan and like, I understand, like, there's criticism about how the media responds to stuff. Like, oh, you're not asking hard questions. You're not doing this and stuff. And like, I'll be honest, like, as a journalist, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. I've made plenty of mistakes. There's things where I wish I would have asked or I didn't ask, or there's things I did ask that I wish I wouldn't have. Here's the thing, though. Like, the one thing that's been really hard about, like, this season is, while I feel like sports information departments have done a really good job of giving us as much access as possible, what we have gone from is, in a typical season, in a week like this, we would not only speak to Scott Frost twice, we would speak to both coordinators, but we'd also speak to most assistant coaches. So usually one day, if it's Tuesday, would be defense day, so you'd get all of the defensive assistants. On Wednesdays, you'd get all of the offensive assistants, whatever the case is, however they break it down. So when you have questions about, hey, what's the decision making on the offensive line, you would have Greg Austin to actually ask that question to. Yeah. Right now, your questions have to go to Frost, or they have to go to Lubick. And now it's not that Frost and Lubick can't answer those questions. It's just they're not going to maybe give the answers that you as a fan are looking for. The person who's probably going to provide more insight is Greg Austin. We have spoken to Greg Austin once this season. Yeah. And that's once, and then he was on the Sports Nightly radio show. So like we've gotten a total of 2 times, but one of them was an actual like Zoom call. Same thing with Coach Verduzco. We have gotten once. And I remember that day, just to be clear, like I am sitting in a winter coat right now because I'm still so cold. I was in like shorts and a t-shirt because that's where we were at that point in the season. So it's been that long. Now, he has, again, also been on Sports Nightly, but again, that's not a media event. Like, that is a show for essentially more or less fans. So fans can text in and ask questions. But when you don't have the access and the availability, which COVID has really hamstrung how much access and availability we have, you don't really get to ask the questions of the people that I really think should be asked the questions. So here's the problem. Nebraska is going to play Rutgers on Friday. Something is going to happen. One of those two teams, I assume, will win. I have no idea. That game could just fall into the depths of the earth, and we would not probably all be all that shocked if it did. I don't think Nebraska's going to get a bowl game, even though technically it could. You'd have to have a lot of teams opting out, because here's the thing. While everyone is eligible for a bowl game this year, and there's no 6-game rule or whatever, you still don't have enough bowl games for every team. So you'd have to have enough teams opt out. And the question is, unless some bowl felt Nebraska is going to give them the best viewership, that's really what you're going for.
Right.
Is it out of the question? I guess not. I think, count on it. I would just probably say that's fine. Apparently, the NCAA has also, and I've really, really half-assed read this. I want to be clear. I really did not read this well. The NCAA has said something about scheduling another game following the 19th, and I think it's about makeup games, but I have no idea. Yeah. So here's the thing. Could Nebraska technically play another game? I guess. Will Nebraska play another game? I would be shocked.
I would be too.
So what is going to happen is when we speak to whomever following the game on Friday, that is probably the last you're going to hear, at least officially, from anyone until signing day in February. The early signing period starts this week. We'll get some availability from that. But I'm just going to say right now, I don't think we're going to get a whole lot of Zoom call invites for the month of January. So it's going to be pretty quiet, and that's the challenge of something like this. Yeah. In a normal year, you might have other events in January, some junior days, some recruiting events where you could reasonably say, maybe I'll get a coach or I can request some time. That is not going to be the case in this off season. So not knowing what we will get as far as spring football, because who knows? Yeah. Who knows what's going to happen there? I'm saying it's going to be a long off season for so many reasons. And one of them is because it's going to be pretty dang quiet. Right. You're probably not going to get a whole lot of information outside of
it was this year.
Right. It's going to be like this, but probably a little bit even more so.
Well, yeah.
So your information on Nebraska football is probably going to come from Randy down the street, who heard from his second cousin that this person is doing this. That is going to be our information. That's going to be I'm not.
There won't be official information, is what you're saying,
unless they give it out to us.
Right. Exactly.
And I just wanted to say, it's not that people aren't requesting. We request time and stuff, but these individuals obviously are getting requested by a bunch of people. So it's not like they're going to go and say, okay, I'm going to do a day of only talking to reporters. They're like, I'm going to spend this time with my family or doing something else. Right. And I get that. It's just, it's that has been the hardest part, at least in my opinion, is I understand where fan criticism comes from. You are allowed to criticize. I've always said this. I have no issue with criticism.
I get that too.
But just don't at least be fair in your criticism.
Right. I also don't think that what has made, I get the criticism, but I don't understand what put people under the impression that this staff was ever the kind of staff that gave up a whole lot of information anyway.
Yeah,
there's not going to be anything groundbreaking that comes out. No. Unless somebody completely misspeaks.
It's going to be a lot of watching the transfer portal.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a lot of that kind of stuff. And the hard part is with the transfer portal, you have to have the right source who has access to it to be able to tell you. And sometimes you hit the jackpot and you get that person. Right. And sometimes you have that person and that person changes jobs or loses access. The thing is information is always it's always fleeting in a way. Yeah. And you do your best to try to obtain as much of it as possible. But there is also stuff where I've seen fans who are hey, if why aren't you asking about this particular situation or scenario? And it's like, honestly, until somebody tells me that officially, I don't know how I can ask about that because it sounds like a rumor. So even if it is true or it's based in truth, how are you asking a person that seriously without knowing?
Right.
It's a lot. And you know what? I get it. Like, we're all frustrated. And when we're frustrated, we put our frustration and blame in places. And as a member of the media, I have long said, like, I'm totally fine with criticism. I don't have an issue with that. But like, I will say, if you come to my Instagram in the middle of a football game, this happened a few weeks ago. Like, it was the middle of the game. It was like halftime. And somebody came to my Instagram account and was like in the comment railing on about how like no one is asking tough questions. And I was trying to figure out like what they were talking about. And they must have been talking about when they do those interviews like right before halftime. Yeah. Or like, because we hadn't yet talked to anyone. So I was like, I don't have a reference point for what you're talking about.
Right. And we're not part of the TV broadcast.
Right. So like, I was like very confused by that. So that one was one piece of criticism where I was like, I can't accept this one because I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Here's
the other thing too, like with the limited access, like people haven't really seen practices and things like that. And I think a lot of the hard questions would probably be answered by seeing practice.
Yeah. And that, you know, what's funny is one of my favorite quotes. Let me see if I can actually look up like I said, I'm going to paraphrase it for now. And if I can find it, but Tom Osborne made a quote one time about the reason that he allowed the media to watch, games was basically that we weren't smart enough to actually watch practice was because we wouldn't have been actually smart enough to like understand what we were seeing anyway. So he like didn't have an issue with like allowing the media to watch because he's like, what are you going to take from this? You don't know anyway. Like, and I kind of appreciated that. I'm very knowledgeable about football. I do believe that I know what I'm doing. But with that said, I'm not going to understand all the schemes and everything that Nebraska is doing.
I don't mean like that. Yeah. I mean the feel. Because you can get a feel for a temperature of a team
100%
from a practice. I don't mean like, what's their playbook look like?
Right. Well, I'm just saying, my point is like, if I'm at practice, I ain't walking away with your playbook because I'm not going to be able to watch what you're doing in practice and be like, I might be able to say like, oh, based on, this particular thing, it looks like there's, switching between a 3-4 base defense and a 4-3 a bit, and they're doing this and this and this. But like, all of that's visible in a game. So I mean, like that kind of stuff, like, you might be able to glimmer a little bit from it or glean a little bit from it, but no, you're not going to like get the whole thing. I mean, but the feel is important because when you are able to see something like, okay, I'm going to use Nebraska volleyball as an example. I have had the privilege of watching some Nebraska volleyball practices. And I'm going to tell you, those practices are very like, they're very like by the book. Like here is what we're doing. Now there is some fun to it, but I remember one of the practices I was at, this was a couple of years ago. Lexi's son was it was her first year at Nebraska, and we know it took her some time to kind of like grow into her role with Nebraska. And she was kind of, just not wanting to go through practice at full speed. She was kind of, just for whatever reason, it just wasn't her day. And I will never forget one of the assistant coaches trying to kind of talk with her about like, hey, we need to get this on track. We need to kind of figure this out. And it wasn't improving. And so John Cook walked up and was like, this is the expectation of you at practice. And if you're not going to do this, then like, don't be here. And you know what? I don't know if she wanted to. She probably internally was like, this sucks. I don't like whatever was going on that day just wasn't right. Yeah. But she got it together and she finished practice and she had a better practice because that was the expectation. And so when I look at like that, because I've seen it, I can now understand in a game situation when they're having a bad time, something's going on and Cook is saying, this is my expectation of you. That's because that expectation is set in practice.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm kind of taking some of this, like I've been thinking it, but it was Greg Smith and Jay Foreman talked about it on Straight Up Breakdown, but all three of us talked about it before they recorded yesterday. I'm just curious, what is the expectation that's being set? Because it to me seems like it is wishy-washy, because that is the play that you see on the field. So after they win a game, do they go lighter in practice because they won?
Or are they always going light in practice?
Right.
I mean,
what's a good practice to you?
Right.
Like, I just don't understand.
And that's the thing, is we have really no idea.
Yeah.
So we have to take Frost at his word,
Right.
because he says it's great, and then his players are reiterating what they say. But like, I don't know what a good practice means to them. I know as a coach, it's so funny because I hear these things now. When I coached high school cheerleading, how many times I would tell them in practice, what you practice is what shows up in your performance. So if you're practicing lazy arms, if you're practicing only going 80%, when you get to the game, that's what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. You're going to give 80% because suddenly you're not going to suddenly, like, a lot of it's muscle memory.
Yeah.
A lot of it is just things having to kick in. And I remember they would roll their eyes at me and, oh, coach, I'm just tired. I'm this. And like, I get it. But like, I also need you to understand that if you're not giving 100% in practice, that is what I'm going to see.
What rolls over.
Right. So like if we're going to have, I remember one year they really wanted to do this particular halftime performance. And I was like, I can't roll you out there to do this because what I'm watching in practice is what's going to show up on the field. And I know that's not what you want out there.
Right.
And so I was like, until you can show me that this is going to be incredibly polished, full of energy, exactly what you're going to show on a game day,
we're not doing it.
And they thought I was so unfair. Now, I'm not saying that, like, this is going to sound weird. I actually do believe Frost when he says that practice is good. And
what is your bar for good is what I'm curious about.
So that's the thing where that's the part that gets more dicey, is when he says, I believe things are getting better, I see a good practice, I don't have any reason to tell him he's wrong.
Right.
Because he sincerely may see that. Mm-hmm. But something is disconnected if you're having really good practices. Now, this would be my question. And like these questions, by the way, have come up. Yeah. It's not that he has not been asked this. He has literally been asked, okay, so what's the disconnect? And the answers are always like, I don't know what you expect from an answer from that anyway. Because unless somebody is going to be like, well, I've really sat down and like really thought this through. Yeah. And that is a question that I almost don't know if you can answer. Yeah. Because if you really are having really good practices and it's not showing up on game day, what is the answer? Yeah. So it sounds weird when I say that. I do actually believe when he says, I think it's there. I see it. I have no reason to question him on that. Right. In the sense of like, he very well, that could be what he believes he is seeing. I just don't know how to, like, I just can't back it up because I just don't know. Right. So
my thing with that is then that to me screams that they legitimately have just shitty habits. And when they start to fall down in games, they rely on those shitty habits and don't know how to get themselves out of it. Well, you see it. You can see it sometimes in certain players and in certain plays and in certain situations. When something goes wrong, you can see it immediately.
I mean, okay, let's look at Sarah Fuller, who, by the way, boop, she was 2 for 2, and she threw so much shade on Twitter. Bless her.
I love her.
So many, love her.
Fangirl, so hard.
Again, she is somebody who is on a winning soccer team. Like, she knows how to win. Yeah. And in the first game she played with Vanderbilt football, she's like looking around and she's like, there's no energy here. Like, no one is excited. No one's amped up. She's trying to get, she's the one who's like, all right, everyone, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's go. Let's do this. And people are asking her after the game, like, why were you, what were you saying? Like, what were you doing? And she's like, I'm looking around and, there's just nothing here. Yeah. So, I mean, this is a winner right here who knows what's going on. I have said for a long time that Nebraska does not know how to win for some reason along the way. And this predates Frost. I want to be clear.
And Mike Riley.
It predates Mike Riley.
And Bo.
It honestly, I wish we could, maybe that is a key, is where can we pinpoint this whole thing kind of.
It's a culture is super freaking important.
Yes, but now with your Frost, you have to be careful with the culture talk because here's the problem. You don't get to say, well, our culture is not there because we're still building our culture.
Yeah.
And then in the same breath say, but we don't really want to look too closely at the transfer portal because we don't want to affect our culture and what we've built from that.
Right.
Now, I think you can actually marry those together where it's like, yes, like maybe you have built your culture to a closer point where you're afraid that if you bring in somebody without real strong evaluation, it will derail that further. Mm-hmm. But I'm just saying you have to be careful with the culture talk because, and I'm saying with him,
right?
Because you don't want to say in one breath the culture's bad and then the next breath be like, but the culture's in a better spot where like I'm not sure I want to go find somebody out of the transfer portal.
Right.
That is where it gets. Unfortunately that is where fans start to raise their eyebrows and go, well, what do you mean? Like which one is it?
Yep.
And I can understand the frustration there. It's just Nebraska somewhere along the way stopped knowing how to win.
Yeah.
And I have seen this story so many times. Let's think. When Bo Pelini went to Wisconsin with Nebraska and Wisconsin just steamrolled Nebraska. I was at that game, and I remember just being like, did anyone in this game want to play it? Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. You know who was on that team? Kenny Bell. And Kenny Bell is an incredibly fired up individual. So it's like, I don't think Kenny just didn't want to win. So like, this is bigger. Then this is when I think I started to realize like one player is not going to be enough of a spark. There is something more fundamental here. Yes. And then, you know, we saw that through the Riley era where I remember again standing on the sideline of Wisconsin. And that was that season that they ended up with like 9 wins and it was totally overblown because whatever. But
yes, it was.
That Wisconsin game came down to the wire.
Yeah.
And I remember I was standing on the Nebraska sideline, very close to the end zone, very close to some of the assistant coaches. And the defense just needed to stop, just to get a stop. And I don't know why in my brain I thought, there's no way it's going to happen, which is like not how you're supposed to like feel about a team. Cause like literally it is possible, but like how many games have we seen like that where it's just like,
they just have to do this.
They just have to get a stop. They just have to do this. And you're like, but they're not going to.
Yeah. To me, honestly, like that, and I know that I've referenced this book a ton, but like it really, really opened my eyes to some stuff, and it's very applicable to this situation. The power of habit. It doesn't matter how long ago this trickle-down culture, that's the part of the culture I'm talking about, is the inability to win, the inability to hold on and actually just execute all the way through. Started at some point, and pinpointing that would be wonderful, but I don't think that's possible. But it has been going on for quite some time, like 15 years amount of time is what I'm talking about. But figuring that out, and it honestly, like changing that part of the culture starts at the top. So you got to figure out how to get in there and change those habits, because at the end of the day, when you rely and fall back on things that are not allowing you to execute, and usually it's a timing thing, or honestly, it's a lot of muscle memory when you're repeatedly doing plays over and over and over again when you're an athlete. But sometimes you go back to the improper way to execute said thing, and it can throw your timing off by a millisecond, and it changes drastically the entire look of that play.
Something that was said this week heading into the Rutgers matchup was literally that, and I can't remember which player said it. So 4 players spoke on Monday, and I apologize that I can't off the top of my head remember which one said it. It was either Garrett Nelson, Casey Rogers, Ty Robinson, or Austin Allen. But one of them was talking about this exact scenario that, like, basically when they're watching film, they see one guy do something wrong, and it's like if that one guy wouldn't have done that, it would have worked. So that's the thing. The room for error is so small that they're saying, like, basically we can see where it went wrong. And if that guy would have just hit his block, if he would have just hit his block, like everything would have been fine. Okay, so my question is why didn't that guy hit that block?
Right.
Ever so often, missing a play, missing a block, missing whatever. It's going to happen. Like you're going to cut the wrong way.
You're going to look at the wrong thing.
It's going to happen. But when you're saying that consistently about so many plays where you're like, oh, well, on that play, this guy, missed his block. Oh, on this guy didn't fully run his route.
Habits.
Yes. Why are your wide receivers not running the routes as quickly as they're supposed to? Like we've heard that one already, is that the quarterbacks didn't have the trust that the receivers would be where they were supposed to be. That is a habit.
Yes. Those are habits.
I'm not sitting here saying that like I can coach a football team. Like I certainly understand there's 100%. Way more to this than what I am providing. Like I get it. Like let's be clear. If this was everything, we would have solved this entire problem and we'd be done.
Right. Exactly.
But this is a start. And I think if you are going to sincerely try to fix this, you have to almost like humble yourself in this way where it's like, the errors are starting. Yeah. In practice. They're starting here.
If you have to, pare down your cute little playbook. Don't get f***ing cute. Seriously, stop being cute. It's the Big Ten. Call the things that you know will work. You don't have to be cute. Do the get back to basics. Do the simple shit.
Well, and that's what kind of like drove me a little bit crazy about the matchup with Minnesota is I hear you. Yeah. I hear you, Nebraska fan, who's like, Adrian Martinez was not completing a pass downfield, and I'm very frustrated. I get it. But here's the thing. You know what he was doing? Well, here's what he was doing well. He was running well against Minnesota. Nebraska as a team was running well against Minnesota. He was completing smaller passes, shorter passes effectively. Why was that gone away from? Like that right. I understand that Minnesota adjusted after halftime, and so you're getting a little bit of a different look, and so you have to adjust too. However, that didn't mean you need to start taking these giant shots downfield because we know that's not working. Right. It's also a very cold day. The wind was out of control. So for whatever reason, Adrian was not seeing the people he was needing to. He was not able to get the ball where it was supposed to go. So maybe then go back to just run the ball. Right. Just run the ball. And kind of like to like put a nice little bow on this. If you're somebody who's like, let's ask the tough questions. After the game, Frost was literally asked, why didn't you run the ball at Minnesota more? Because they've shown that that's an area of weakness. And he said he didn't understand the question. You can ask a tough question and sometimes you're met with nothing. Exactly. I just want to be clear about that. Sometimes, and you might think like, well, why don't you push him further? Most people are not looking to get into a bickering match over a Zoom call. Like it's, the thing is like, honestly, and this is my perspective, that answer said more than if he would have answered it. The fact that he wanted to get away from that question probably said more than it needed to. And so, these are those things that we're going to have to break down. And I'm guessing when we say it's going to be a long off season, I'm guessing there's going to be changes of some kind. I don't know what they are. I don't have insider information. Speculation. For you, but you all can speculate. I mean, at this point, like speculation is going to like rule the town. Like,
I understand. I understand that it is frustrating because I find it frustrating myself because there are questions that I do think deserve answers, but like I was trying to say earlier, like just because the hard questions are asked doesn't mean they're going to be answered. You just got to pay attention. It's sometimes it's an in between the lines stuff. Like I've been watching these games completely different this year under, it's not even a microscope. I'm just paying attention to the little stuff. Keep it simple, stupid is what and I'm not calling anyone stupid. It's just a saying, but keep it simple, stupid. I repeat to myself all the time when I see these breakdowns. It's just like something is the disconnect may be as simple as they're not understanding or they're not confident in the plays or something. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, but like the psychology of the game to me is what stands out the most. There's something there.
I just want to point something out, and this is not, and I want to be clear about something, because if for some reason, Scott Frost, if you ever listen to this podcast, hello, it's good to hear you. It's good to have you here. No, I mean, I'm just going to be honest. Like I have a lot of respect for Frost and for the staff. Like I really like, I think, as many people do, would like to see him be successful. Yeah. I wish I had the answer for him. Like, wouldn't that be great? But it just, I want to go find, and I'm Googling this right now because I think it's kind of important context. Okay, so when Frost took over at UCF, I just want to point something out. What he did was impressive. And the thing is like, that should never be taken away from him. Like, no one should ever be like, hey, Frost, like, you didn't do a good job or whatever.
Right.
But, okay, so let's go back to the 2015 season. That was the season that Central Florida went 0-12. Yep. Didn't win a single game. That was the season that their coach was ultimately fired, which led the way for Frost. However, I want to just say, so they went 0-12 in 2015. But let's look at that 2014 schedule. They were 9-4, okay? That 9-4 included wins over BYU. It also included, I mean, it was a pretty good schedule. I'm like looking at it. There were some close losses too. Like, I mean, they lost by 2 points to Penn State. Okay? Not a bad, 9-4, 2-point loss to Penn State. You leave that and you're like, that feels pretty good. 2013, so 2 years before that losing season, they went 12-1. Okay? 12-1. And you know what they did? They beat Baylor 52-42 in a bowl game on New Year's Day. So I just want to point something out about this. By the time Frost got there in 2016, now he had a team, and I talked to Trey Neal about this when he was at Nebraska and did a story on him for Hill Varsity. They were, that locker room was broken. Like, a lot of stuff was not going well. However, these players had been on winning teams prior to this, had won some big games, had gone 12-1, 9-4, and then they went 0-12. And it's like, well, shit, what happened there? So when Frost came in 2016, he wasn't having to completely reset minds as far as like, how do you win a game?
Right.
So when they came in and they won, they went 6-7 that first year. And now there were a lot of rough games. Like Michigan at the time beat them 51-14. But you started toward the end of the season to see things come around. They even got a bowl game. Right. So by the time that 2017 season came, and like it was lightning in a bottle, 13-0, they beat Maryland, which I understand, but like that was a big deal because the year before Maryland had beat them. Like, you look at this schedule, and I was at that game against Auburn. This was a team that knew how to win. Right. Like, I remember, so I just want to point this out where my mindset is, as somebody who covers Nebraska football, I'm sitting in the press box getting ready to go down to the field, and I was not convinced that UCF would hold on to this game. Yeah. I was like, they're not going to win. They're not going to win this game. Auburn is way too good. Auburn is way too talented. They've got too much size. It's not going to happen. Like, this has been fun. Yeah. This has been so much fun. Thank you, Scott Frost. Thank you, Central Florida, for giving me a very entertaining game. But like, the wheels are going to fall off any moment. And you know what didn't happen? The wheels didn't fall off because this team knew how to win. These players had the mentality that they knew when the going got tough, they had to fall back on their practices. Yes. And you know what they did? They beat Auburn. So I'm not discrediting anything that Frost did. What he did at UCF was impressive, and it should be remembered. Right. People should look at that and be grateful for what he did. However, what he inherited in Nebraska is vastly different than what he inherited at Central Florida. But I also don't want to do the whole thing of like blaming this on one particular staff. Right. This problem is now like ingrained. And you know what? It's a part of
15 years.
It's a part of his problem now too. Yes. Like this is his problem now. Yeah. This is not
you inherited a problem, but you need to fix it.
Right. This is no longer like I can only look at the past staff. I can only look at what has happened in the past. No. You may have inherited this, but this is now yours too. Yes. You have not found the way out of this. Yep. So this is where, as somebody who covers this team, I wish I had the answers. If I did, I would be a millionaire because I'd be coaching this team myself. Right. But I have to imagine that's massively frustrating because when you came in, you're like, okay, I see the problem. I see what's here. And now you're 3 years in and you haven't figured out how to fix it. Yet. Yeah. But
Or maybe you did and you haven't been able to fix it yet.
Yeah, but that's still on you. At this point, it's on you.
Yep.
It's no longer on anyone else.
It's 3 years, dude.
It stinks. It stinks because this problem has been here a long time.
Yes, it has.
But it is now your problem.
I think that's the other thing too, is that, like, not to overblow the fact that when something like that has been ingrained in a program for as long as this has been, it is going to take some time.
Yeah.
However, I would think that we would be seeing progression versus some regression in some spots. And I think that might be the most frustrating thing for the fans. And even just like covering the program or paying attention to it, that part is frustrating. It's a little miffing. It is befuddling. And now we have, after Friday, 17 years to think about it, because that's how long the off season will be.
Yes. Now, if you're somebody who is like, what do I have to look forward to? Just a small little FYI, Nebraska has actually just found out that its game will now kick off with Rutgers at 6:30 p.m. on Friday.
Boop, boop.
Because
Hooray.
The game that was at 6:30 has been canceled due to COVID.
Yeah.
So,
hooray, 2020 in a bottle. Don't forget, before we end this
Yes.
episode, by the way, to
Yes.
email us questions for the mailbag, which will be next week's recording.
you can email us at mindyourownpodcast@hillvarsity.com. Why is my brain not working on this now?
Yeah.
mindyourownpodcast@hillvarsity.com. Or you can tweet at us. I'm at Erin Sorensen. She's at Sasha72. Right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Or you can find us on Instagram. I'm not even going to tell you what they are, like what mine is or what Sasha's is at this point. I know I told you mine earlier, but like if you want to go find them and you want to do it that way, that's totally fine there too. Here's the thing. Like I said, as somebody who appreciates and enjoys her job, I want to cover something that's fun just as much as you want to watch something that's fun.
Yep.
And just sometimes because it might seem critical also does not mean it also doesn't mean it's a bad thing. You know?
Right. Some criticism,
Again, same thing with the media. It's okay if you're critical.
Right.
Just as long as you're fair with your criticism.
There you go.
And so it's going to be a long off season. And you have every right to feel frustrated by that and to be critical. Just keep it fair. That's all.
Yeah.
Just keep it fair. Now, you can send that criticism to us. Again, Mind Your Own Podcast at hillvarsity.com. Next week's episode is going to be a mailbag. Just to give you a quick sampling, we have questions about action figures. We have questions talking about Title IX. So as you can imagine, they can range. So you don't need to you can ask me, Erin, are you handling the new Taylor Swift album? Okay. And my answer would be kind of. Because I have a lot of thoughts. So if you want more on that, please ask. I'm happy to tell you all about it. And if you're somebody who's like, Erin, what song should I listen to? I would recommend Marjorie and go and watch the lyric video on YouTube, but also prepare yourself if you've lost a grandparent. That will make you very sad.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So, but if you want more, please ask. I'm here to address all of my Taylor Swift thoughts, everything. Or you can just send other questions if you don't want me to talk about Taylor Swift. But we do appreciate you as always. Hopefully you have a good week.
Yeah. Try to have a good week. And we'll have fun next week. And I won't swear as much.
No, we're going to probably swear more, but it'll be fun swearing.
Yeah, it'll be fun swearing.
It'll be fun swearing.
WTF.
Unless you ask questions that aren't fun.
Yeah.
And then we're just
So this is really on you.
This is on you. You tell us what kind of episode you want. But yeah, email us at mindyourownpodcast@hillvarsity.com, and we will talk to you next week.
Bye.
You love Husker sports. We love Husker sports. So that means you need to catch Big Red Wrap Up, game highlights, analysis, all of it on NET, Nebraska's PBS and NPR stations. It's every Tuesday night live at 7 on NET World and Facebook, and then again at 10 on NET. That's Central Standard Time, though, for those of you who do not live in Nebraska. Again, you love the Huskers. We love the Huskers. Don't miss Big Red Wrap Up.